hey guys, just so you know, we're gonna just dive right into spoilers in this episode. So if you haven't seen Stranger Things yet, go ahead and go on to Netflix and watch all 8 episodes. Really quick watch. You won't regret it. It's a really incredible show. So go ahead and watch that and then come back and listen to this episode. And if you're in the shower and worried about spoiling it, I'll give you time to jump out and turn off the podcast. And in the meantime, check out my solo side project podcast, Anthology, at anthologypod.com, where I review the Twilight Zone and related shows and movies. Anyway, once again, thank you for downloading this, and hope you enjoy our review of Stranger Things.
Sorry, it's my fault. There has to be a spoiler warning.
It's okay, Tiny.
Is it?
You guys will know about 20 minutes into this recording.
Every time we do this, I just feel a little upside down.
This is Matt Hurt at Obsessive Viewer on Twitter.
This is Tiny at Obsessive Tiny on Twitter.
And this is a bonus episode of ObsessiveViewer.com's The Obsessive Viewer Podcast. And welcome to this bonus episode of The Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, trope, movie, or show, each episode. You can find back episodes at ovpodcast.com, find the blog at obsessiveviewer.com, and you can also join the Facebook group at facebook.com. Just type in Obsessive Viewer Podcast and look under groups. And if you like what you hear and want to support the podcast, please head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review. The more ratings and reviews that we get, the easier it will be for people to find the show in iTunes' search results. And if you're feeling particularly generous, you can always support the show with your wallet by clicking the donate button on obsessiveviewer.com, as well as in the donate link in the show notes of each episode. You can also become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where you can choose from several different reward tiers, one of which being, if you pledge $5, you can force us to say anything on the podcast of your choosing, no matter what the content of the sentence is. So those are all fun, and any donation made will help pay the fees to keep the podcast running so we can continue to provide you with our week-to-week ramblings of movie and TV topics. And finally, tickets are now on sale for Shocktober in Irvington 3. Shocktober in Irvington is a one-night event screening of short horror films here in Indianapolis, created by local filmmakers. Each year we rent out a theater, screen the short horror films, interview the filmmakers on stage, raffle off DVDs, prizes, Blu-rays, gift cards, or local businesses, all to benefit the Irvington Historical Society and give back to a great community in Irvington, just east of Indianapolis. And for podcast listeners, you can get $1 off the price of admission when you use the promo code podcast1 when you buy your tickets. More information as well as a link to buy tickets can be found at shocktoberinirvington.com. So, Tiny, we're here with a bonus episode.
Yes, we are.
Long time no see.
Hope the Demogorgon doesn't get us.
Right, because of Stranger Things?
Because of
the
Dungeons and the Dragons.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So anyway, as Tiny so shrewdly hinted at, we are here today to with a bonus review of Netflix's original series Stranger Things, created by the Duffer Brothers, and it came out like a month ago. I just now finished it because I've been busy and haven't had time, but this show just kind of came out of nowhere and took the Twitterverse and everything by total surprise. Tiny, did you have any idea what to expect going into this? Did you have any hype surrounding it before the kind of internet kind of ran with it?
I did, because there's it had a lot of this movie has a ton of, this show has a ton of tone. It's like it's a very everything is very deliberately. it's almost like everything's kind of referential, like it's in reference to other things almost, but it's its own thing and it's unique. But like from the get-go, I got a very Stephen King feel from this. I got a very X-Files feel from this show. E.T., Steven Spielberg, 1980s. It's all very nostalgic and referential to all those things. And so I had an idea of what I was getting into. What I didn't see coming was how big it was going to be.
Me too.
This took the interwebs by storm.
Absolutely. This was a cultural phenomenon that I took weeks to watch. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's funny because a lot of people have been, at least a lot of like critics I've heard on podcasts have referenced that. So my enjoyment of this show is steeped in my love of Stephen King, and the way that this show just really captures that tone that Stephen King is so brilliantly conveys throughout his stories. His stories are sometimes like his endings are a little derided here and there, because he kind of has a tendency to end them not so well in a way that audiences or readers would like. But the important thing that I latch onto with Stephen King is that the journey of the characters and the characterization is so beautifully done that I fall in love with the stories I read. The Eyes of the Dragon notwithstanding, I just read that. You can read my review in the future at obsessivebooknerd.com. But anyway, so that's what I latched onto with this. So when I hear it reviewed on podcasts and hear or see some of the more mainstream or official critic circles talking about it, I kind of noticed a theme that a lot of people said that this show sometimes felt like a kind of an amalgamation or a pastiche of different references kind of cobbled together to create this just ultra nostalgic series without any without much original or unique things about it. And the way that I've heard it kind of broken down is that throughout this whole show, which, by the way, I should go ahead and just read the plot description for those who don't know. The plot description for Stranger Things is: when a young boy disappears, his mother, a police chief, and his friends must confront terrifying forces in order to get him back. The show is set in like 83 in the fictional Hawkins, Indiana. So that's a good way to, show you what kind of tone this is. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the way that I've heard it described is that there are like three kind of sets of characters. There is Winona Ryder's character, who's the mother of the missing child, and Hopper or Hop, who is the police chief of the town. And then there's the teenagers. So there's Nancy, there's Jonathan, there's Steve. They have their own thing going on, and then the younger kids, Mike, Lucas, Dustin, and 11, they all have their thing going on. So all of these plots are kind of simultaneously going. And the way that I've heard it described is it's like the adults are in a Stephen King novel, the teenagers are in a John Carpenter like horror movie, and the kids are in like a Steven Spielberg movie. Mm-hmm. And the combination of all that for some people is a little too much nostalgia and too much. I just latched on to those homages and those references, and I was just along for the ride the entire time. I did not think it was overdone. I didn't think it was too nostalgic. I thought that this was such a fun and captivating and thrilling season of television that I was really, really engaged with it, and I really liked it. Yeah. So where do you want to start?
Well, that was well said, and I think the show is good despite all those things. Mm-hmm. I think people want to point to that nostalgia and the referential nature of those things as a negative thing. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that was their in to gain an audience, because people tuned in to see what that was going to be, and then they did their own thing and they made this a relatively unique story. I think they made it their own. They didn't just plagiarize or tweak a story from Spielberg or King or whoever. You know, it had they made it their own, and that's all that matters to me. And all of the nostalgia and the references are just icing on the cake.
Yeah,
so that's how I feel, anyways.
Yep. And it's funny, the Duffer Brothers, who created the show and are the producers on it, they lobbied pretty heavily to remake it.
Right.
Yeah, and it just, I'm gonna read it for the first time after I finish the Dark Tower series, rereading it. But that it just seems like this show just really captures that feeling that I remember from like the miniseries and what I've picked up about it. Throughout the years, and just the references throughout this entire season are just remarkable. Like like the episode titles alone, the ones that jump to mind is I think I don't remember what episode it is, but it's called the Weirdo on Maple Street, which is a reference to so far my favorite episode of the Twilight Zone, the Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. And then also, Tiny, did you catch this? I think it was like episode 5 or 6 is titled The Body. Yeah. Okay. Did you catch that reference?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. Reference to Stephen King's short story The Body, which is the basis for Stand By Me.
Right.
It's just like those little bits and pieces here and there. There's like little hints of like one character's reading Cujo. They dress up 11 somewhat similar to E.T., which some people weren't too fond of that, but I didn't mind it. But
I thought it was funny.
Yeah, it's just
funny way to make a reference.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just I don't know, it felt like these references in these everything about it just came from a place of love and affection.
It wasn't laziness, it was passion.
Exactly.
That's why they reference these things.
Yeah. So what did you think of the kind of overall story? We can kind of break it down by each plotline, the adults, the teenagers, and the kids. So what did you feel about the adults, Hop and Joyce and the adults in the show?
I mean, to me, the most interesting was Hop. Mm-hmm. I think he has this huge chip on his shoulder with his personal life, involving his family, and I think that's what really drives him throughout the show. And I think while that's not a new thing, we've seen that from characters before, I appreciate how it fit into the story. I think it really drove the character to do what he did throughout the story, and it was really satisfying. He was one of my favorite characters, Hop, throughout the show. I think Winona Ryder got kind of a bad rap because her character is fairly stereotypical. She's the damaged mother. She's a single mother, and she's got her child is missing, and she kind of it consumes her entire life, and she's very sad and crying all the time, and that's kind of a bummer thing, and also something we've seen a lot. But I think she did a good job with that character, first of all, and then secondly, again, I think that motivation really drove her to a really cool place in this show. She starts to realize her son wasn't killed; he's just missing, and he's missing in a place that we can't necessarily see, and she finds the links into that other place, and it's, again, trying not to spoil here.
Right. We'll do a separate spoiler section.
Okay. But I think the path that stereotype leads her down really sets her apart from other characters that have this kind of experience. So again, that kind of plays into the theme of how there are you kind of know what you're getting a lot with this show in the themes and the references and the characters, but I think they take it to their own place and they make them their own. And I feel like Winona Ryder deserves a little bit more credit for what she was able to achieve with her character.
I agree, and I think that she deserves a lot of credit in the writing as well, because one of the things that I really kind of latched onto throughout the season, at least in the beginning when we're first kind of introduced to the predicament and Winona Ryder's character's struggle with what's going on, because she's like that kind of frantic, kind of unhinged quality that she brings to the role, that comes from such a place of just frenzy and not knowing how to fit. Like, it comes across as crazy and just crazy. And that is so, like, one of my favorite things in the entire season was the way that her oldest son Jonathan, like, their dynamic in the first few episodes before he kind of becomes has his own storyline running with the Nancy character, where you can kind of get the sense that it's just him and his mom there, and they're both dealing with this tragic mystery that's affecting their family and everything, and you can see how much the Jonathan character, the son, he's trying to keep it together and keep everything together and keep his mother from going completely insane with everything. And it's just, the way the writing was I don't know, it kind of resonated with me, and it was just really, I loved that, and I latched onto, and that was a really powerful, dynamic that was presented in the show, for me. I really enjoyed that. And so yeah, Hop.
Mm-hmm.
David Harbour, man,
this is the best I think he's done, and I've seen him in a lot of stuff.
I have too. He's one of those, just like, you've seen him in a lot of things.
He's a character actor.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what exactly I've seen him in. It'll just take a moment.
Yeah. He's in Casino Royale, isn't he?
I want to say he is. He was in Black Mass. He was in Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was. That's where I know him from most of all. He was in the Newsroom.
Yes,
he played the kind of wow. What was it, like the other news anchor?
He was in the show after the main show that was featured on the show.
Yeah, he was the not quite primetime news anchor.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, and he was great, and he was in Quantum of Solace.
Quantum of Solace, okay.
Yeah, and it's just he's been in so many things, and he's just such a great dynamic character actor, and it's great to see him in a role that is just so meaty for him.
Yeah, he commands a lot of attention when he's on screen.
He really does, and it's a character that could easily be construed as or depicted as, or a more lazy actor could have made him more of an archetype. Just like this troubled police chief who is dealing with things that are so out of his element. But David Harbour just has this presence to him that's like, you want to root for him so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And the backstory that they give that character is so heartbreaking, and there are scenes in the season that color that backstory in that's so beautiful and poignant and just heartbreaking all at the same time. And it's like they convey enough information without having to kind of beat you over the head with it. And I really appreciated that. There were times where I got maybe a little bit choked up, and it was just emotionally, it just was really powerful, the way that they had his character arc, and it's also really thrilling. There's his character arc, like, it leads to places where I was like genuinely, like, I was terrified for the character. And I'll talk more about that in spoilers, but I just thought that it was a really great characterization for that character.
I agree. Big fan.
Yep, totally. And yeah. And I'm really looking forward to seeing his career hopefully explode after this.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So why don't we kind of go down the line and go to the teenagers? So there's Nancy is kind of the linchpin of the teen characters. She is the sister of Mike, the kind of leader of the childhood friends that are friends with the missing kid, Will. And her whole character arc involves her dating this kind of douchebag preppy guy, or douchebag popular guy. Mm-hmm. And like, it starts out with her best friend Barb kind of being cast aside, or feeling like she's cast aside, and she eventually gets into a plot line with Jonathan, the brother of the missing kid. It's how did you feel about her arc and the teen storyline throughout the season?
I liked it because it was an interesting again, an interesting into the story because you have self-centered teenagers who only care about themselves, and they only care about how popular they are in high school and the goofy relationships they have and stuff like that. That's what teenagers care about. And they kind of need to wake up and smell the Demogorgon. And they do in this show. And it's really satisfying. I think the relationships that start and end and evolve amongst all these teenagers is really, it's fun to watch them go through their experiences and kind of grow up a little bit and start acting like young adults like they're supposed to. I really appreciated all that. I think I just did not see a weak link acting wise or character wise in this show. Everyone just served a purpose and they drove their purposes home. I especially appreciated the relationship between Nancy Wheeler and Jonathan Byers. Because it's interesting. I think their relationship is almost a little bit too adult. Like they should have fallen in love and become, boyfriend and girlfriend and really, that's what should have happened, but they end up kind of being friends at the end. And I thought it was incredibly satisfying and I loved watching every minute of it. But it's almost unrealistically adult and mature relationship kind of.
So should we just go right into spoilers?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Okay, so you were saying.
So I was saying, it's fascinating to watch these teenagers evolve, basically, and it's always awkward when you're growing up as a teenager, and it was some fun theater for this show. Absolutely,
and since we're in spoilers, I'll mention the thing later. But anyway, and when you say they should have fallen in love and everything, it's funny. So it's funny. I'm not picking that apart because I feel like, I don't know if this is what you were saying or not, but the conventions of drama constitute that they should have, fallen in love. She should have seen oh, Jonathan's the man for me.
Yeah.
But it's funny because the guy creepily took candid pictures of her in various states of undress when she's getting laid. Which is, it's just funny. And that's kind of complexity that's brought to the characterization and the character interactions in the show so well and really well, actually, because it's because that is what you would expect out of the show. Steve is introduced as such a prick early on, and he's kind of just this douche, and we don't want Nancy to stay with him, and we want her to find Jonathan, but it's such an interesting shift in the dynamic, because even though they have this connection when they're hunting the monster, they're still they're just friends. They're close without having to have that romantic link, which I think is such a refreshing thing to see in a drama, because it feels realistic. It's like they're not, when all is said and done, she's not just gonna it would reflect, I think it would be construed as poor characterization and poor writing for that character if she were to just fall in love with him. Because Steve did prove himself when they faced down the Demogorgon in the house, and Steve in that face seemed like he grew a lot in that. So I was totally fine with that ending.
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
I guess I'll say that as opposed to they should have fallen in love, it was kind of the conventional next step in that storyline that most people were, I think, expecting. And so it was just a little unexpected that they didn't.
Sure.
I'm totally fine with the way it went too. I think it was a good conclusion for that storyline, but I was expecting it to go one way and went another way. So that's, in a lot of ways, that's a good thing. So
sure.
Yep.
I'm going to jump back and talk a little bit about Hop a little bit since we're going to spoil it.
Yeah.
So the things that I was referring to that kind of got me a little choked up, was in the last episode, the flashbacks to his daughter.
Yeah.
That just hit me so hard.
That was rough.
That was just really great use of flashbacks. And also the scene where he earlier in the season he calls his ex-wife because he's he wakes up after being drugged by the weird corporation or whatever that's running things, the scientists. And it's just like it comes from a place that's like he thinks he's about to get killed. He's about to be, murdered because he knows everything and everything. So he calls her, and it's just heartbreaking because you can tell that she, just from the sound of it, they don't dwell on it, but she's moved on, and you hear this baby in the background. It's like it just rips your heart out because you know that they both lost a child, and the fact that she's moved on and he can't, and he doesn't have her for emotional support at all. She's moved on. It's just that's so heartbreaking. It tells so much about the character that he's there alone in this, and it's just I loved that characterization. I love David Harbour's performance and what he brought to it and that character.
I absolutely agree, and it's depicted through those flashbacks that he lost his daughter slowly. Like it wasn't like she got hit by a car or something. I mean, she got cancer,
right,
and slowly died over, I assume, months and months. It's just, that's awful. That's like the worst thing ever. It's horrible. And I agree that it's a terrible thing, but the way it motivated his character was, again, fascinating to watch, and I really appreciated that about his character.
Absolutely. And also the scene, I believe it's episode 5, where he breaks into the building. He's looking through it. Like I was so on the edge of my seat during that sequence because it's the beginning of, I think, episode 5, and the way that the scenes are shot with him wandering around, and I was thinking like I was so on the edge of my seat because I had no idea if they were just going to kill him off in the beginning of the episode. I thought that there was a legitimate thing that could happen, that they could kill him off that early in the show, that gruesomely, and fortunately they didn't. But I love that the show defied my expectations or made me not sure how it was going to happen, how everything was going to play it out, and I just love that about it.
Agreed.
Okay, so we're kind of bouncing around a little bit. Do you want to talk about the kids now?
Please.
Yes. So I can't remember his first name, but the last name is Wolfhard.
Finn
Wolfhard. Such a great name.
It is.
But first of all, he's going to be playing Richie in it.
I think he's playing Big Bill, who's the leader, isn't he? I thought he was playing Big Bill.
Richie Tozier.
Oh, he's playing Richie Tozier. Okay, well,
Tozier. Yeah.
He'll be good as Richie Tozier.
Yeah. So all the kids, man, just
yeah,
so good.
I bitch a lot about how much kids suck as actors, and I am so glad to be wrong with this because, like I said, there are no weak links in the characters or the actors, and it is never more present or more notable than with the children in this show. Holy shit. They're all so good. Like, I think all of them should have gotten Emmys. Like,
so incredible.
Give all of them Emmys. That's how good they were. I hate to say this, given how good they all were, but Millie Bobby Brown was just unbelievable. Like, I could not take my eyes off her every single time she was on screen. She was like a shiny diamond in every single episode. Like, I couldn't look away. She was so good, and like just totally wise beyond her years. And her character's 11 has been through just an ungodly amount of trauma, and as a result, it's turned her into this kind of like a shell of a person, and she doesn't know how the world works or how she's supposed to act, and all these different emotions and feelings she's going through. She doesn't know what they are or how to deal with them. And to see I don't even know how old she is, 12, 13 years old, to see basically a tween pull that off is a remarkable feat. And I was just absolutely stunned by what she did in this first season.
Absolutely. I thought that she brought so much to that role, and it was just really, really well done. And it was so captivating and so just really, really captivating to me. As we slowly learn about the powers of her and her growth and learning what it means to be a friend in throughout the course of the season is so great. And just the character dynamics of all the kids it was so amazing, because even though they're still trying to understand what's going on, and it's kind of like they're putting putting the disappearance of their friend into a context that they can relate to in terms of the Demogorgon and the monsters and everything. It's like they're trying to just, they're trying to make sense of the world that they're in now, and it's just amazing that the point of context that they or the frame of reference that they use to contextualize it is what's really going on.
Right.
And just the way that the characters, like, it feels so genuine. Like, you would believe that these kids are just best friends.
Yeah.
And that they spend hours upon hours every week playing Dungeons and Dragons together. And that's something that's so hard to do, especially with kid actors. It's so crazy. And just the conflicts that arise between them throughout the season is just, I loved every second of it, and I loved the way that the characters were handled. And even with all of the crazy stuff going on throughout the season, they still find ways to have just genuine, like, kid moments and kid logic and kid situations. Like, the bullies that they encounter are such massive douchebags, but
yeah.
The way that they're handled throughout the season and the way that they're shown is just so authentic, or not authentic, but so
inspired
and so real.
Yeah.
To that type of characterization. I loved that so much.
Agreed.
Yep.
If you want to see further evidence of how awesome all the kids are, they were on Jimmy Fallon a couple weeks ago. I don't remember, and they were interviewed, like all four of them were on the show together, and they at the end they played a game called Stranger Strings, where it was like it was kind of like Never Have I Ever, sort of kind of like that, but with silly string. And they would silly string you if they thought whoever thought it was. It was kind of funny. But the kids are just like. They're like, yeah, we're on Jimmy Fallon, we're on the Late Show, and we're just going to be awesome. Like, they don't.
That's awesome.
Like, they didn't seem nervous at all, and they weren't like, reserved or goofy like you might expect a kid to be on national television for the first time. They were just having fun. I mean, it's. I want to be friends with these kids, and I'm an adult. Yeah, they're just really
super
cool.
Creepy.
It is. I don't care. They're awesome. Yeah, I was just amazing. I was just amazed at how great they all were, and a ton of the credit should go to the Duffer Brothers for creating these kids. I had read the book It by Stephen King a few months before this came out, maybe even just like a month before this came out, and that book is really famous for how well the children are depicted and how everyone loves all the kids in that book. A lot of those kids are favorite characters for Stephen King fans, and with good reason. And I would go so far as to say that the kids in this show and the kids in It are like interchangeable almost.
Nice.
Not to a fault of the Duffer Brothers. I think I've said this a lot, but they made these characters their own. And I can appreciate both groups and both sets of kids separately. But just anyone who's familiar with the book It, if you fell in love with those kids the way I did in that book, you will enjoy the hell out of Stranger Things, and there's so many parallels there that it's really awesome. I loved it.
Nice. I'm kind of worried that when I read It, which I'm planning on doing very soon, that maybe I'll picture the kids in the show.
Yeah.
But anyway, So I know we're gonna have to kind of wrap up soon because we've been recording a while. But what do you think of Matthew Modine and his whole clandestine group of scientists in the energy building, whatever? I
liked the story. I thought the whole the kind of anti-government thing, or not anti-government, but kind of the whole how the government secrecy thing, I thought was really intriguing, and that's another story that always fascinates me, and I'm always curious to explore those kinds of stories. The Mist came to mind, another Stephen King reference. Matthew Modine, wasn't really crazy about him. I think he's one. I don't know if I call his character a weak link, but I just don't think he was a very fully realized character.
I totally agree.
We just didn't get a lot of him, really, and I kind of wonder if in further seasons, if we'll get more of him. I'm crazy about Matthew Modine as an actor. Sometimes he's great. I really appreciate him when he's in smaller roles and when he's a supporting actor. I loved him on The West Wing. So he can be a really good actor, but I think sometimes he just kind of phones it in. I just don't really buy him that well. I see Matthew Modine, not the character he's playing.
Sure.
And I just get that from him a lot, and I think I would have preferred someone else cast in that role.
Sure. I think he did a fine job, personally. I just think that the writing wasn't... I get that he's the secretive character. He's this person that we're not supposed to know much about. And I'm not complaining that we don't know enough about him. I just don't think his whole main arc throughout the episode, like we're kind of... or the show, is we're kind of struggling with... Does he care for 11, or is it just this is his property and he needs to get it back because she's so powerful? Like it's kind of seemed like it was wrestling one way or the other, and we didn't really get what that character was kind of all about. And I get that he's steeped in mystery and everything, but I kind of wish we would have gotten something. Maybe we did and I just missed it, but. I don't know.
I don't think we did because I didn't pick up on it either.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like his character was very, very manipulative, and he manipulated 11 throughout the movie, and he tried to manipulate some of the parents and Hop throughout the movie, and it was a very vile thing. Like it was a villainous thing to do. And I just don't buy Matthew Modine as a villain. I mean, again, I can think of 10 actors who would have played this role much better than Matthew Modine. He just seems a little wholesome-ish to me, and I don't know if that's the right adjective.
Yeah, he didn't seem menacing enough for me.
Yeah, he should play someone's dad.
Yeah,
like he should play
technically sort of father figure, but no, he wasn't. He was this character who's this mysterious. It would have been better if it was more of a dichotomy between mysterious and sinister and menacing. I didn't get the sense that he was a real. You get the sense that he and the organization are a threat, but he himself, it doesn't seem like he isn't the epitome of evil as his wardrobe and the way that the show wanted to depict him as was.
I agree, but I will say that I think it was really great how this is set in the 80s and it's very steeped in 80s references and nostalgia. Mm-hmm. The show's very steeped in 80s nostalgia and references and everything, and I think it's really funny how they had two of the main actors were Matthew Modine and Winona Ryder, who made names for themselves in the 80s. They're famous for their movies they starred in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Full Metal Jacket for Matthew Modine, and Edward Scissorhands, and all kinds of other movies for Winona Ryder. I think it was just. I thought it was a fun choice. I'll give them that. I'll give them credit for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of we can kind of start winding down. Mm-hmm. A couple kind of fun things. One, the actor who played Jonathan Byers, Charlie Heaton. So, this show is so much. I don't know if you picked up on this or if you got this either, but the show is so much about paying homage to work from the 80s and certain filmmakers and certain creators. Most of all, or potentially most of all, Stephen King, obviously. Mm-hmm. Is it just me, or does Charlie Heaton just look just like a young Stephen King?
He looks similar to him, yeah.
Okay.
Quite a bit, especially in the eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole time I was watching it, I kept thinking if the Dark Tower takes off and they reach a point where they might need, that, maybe they could cast him.
Yeah, could be. I'd buy it.
Yeah, totally.
I'd go for that. Yeah. One of the other things I wanted to mention about the show that I really enjoyed, it can be part of our wind down, is I feel like while it's clearly sci-fi, I feel like the show tapped into a lot of different genres. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of horror elements to this. A lot of scary moments. But at the same time, it was also very kind of mystical, magical kind of stuff, and you get all kinds of sci-fi throughout it. I feel like the way they blended all that together was really fun, and it just kind of, I appreciate it when you just can't necessarily fit something into a box.
Right.
You can't just describe a show or a movie in one sentence. You got to explore it a little bit more, and I think the Duffer Brothers really tapped into that, and it's got elements from so many different genres and so many different subgenres. I appreciated those choices, and it worked out really well. Absolutely.
It's not just this story about a kid with magical powers. It's not just this monster story. It's not this story about just parallel dimensions, and it's not the story about just this secret organization. It's not the story about it, like, there's so many elements of it. Like you said, it's just, it's so good. So to kind of wind up, one other thing. Did you see that thing where what was it? Ben Schwartz, who played John Ralphio on Parks and Rec, he there was a whole thing where he said this is now headcanon for me. Like, this is this is my personal view of what it is now. But he said that, like, I kind of wonder if John Ralphio is actually the illegitimate son of Steve Harrington or whatever from Stranger Things. It's just like that alone, like, because they look so similar.
And both take place in Indiana.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, it's perfect.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So like I kind of like that. Like, in my head now, Stranger Things and Parks and Rec take place in the same universe. But
nice. Also, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the music.
Yes. Oh my God.
Perfect.
So great.
The music is perfect for the show. Like, you couldn't do anything else. It's just
absolutely.
It's beyond fitting.
In the opening credits sequence, or the opening theme sequence, is just so incredible. Yeah. And it borrows from Stephen King font covers from like the 80s. And it's so good. It's so good. Yeah. So to kind of wrap things up a little bit here, and then we'll go to our listeners who posted their thoughts on Facebook, and then we'll call it a night. How do you feel about the way that it wrapped up, and how do you feel about going into season 2? Because they did announce that it is renewed for season 2, and that they are going to it's going to be a sequel to it, so it's not going to be like an anthology series. It's just going to be a sequel to what's going on. So how do you feel about the end of the season 1, and do you think that they can recapture that magic for season 2?
Given how well the first season went, and that I assume they're going to have just about everybody back, I'm not gonna cast any doubts on the second season. I'm going to be just as excited. I'm going to be really excited for it. I'm going to be counting down the days till it premieres. And I think, again, given how well it went, I have a lot of faith in everyone involved to make this a really great show for multiple seasons to come. I'm glad it's a sequel. I think the end of the first season, they didn't make it necessarily a cliffhanger, but they gave us some stuff to wonder about for the next season, and I think that was a good choice. I didn't want a literal cliffhanger or anything goofy like that. I'm just excited to see more of these characters and more of Hawkins, Indiana. I hope it's going to be great, and I have no doubts.
I absolutely agree. I'm a little, I guess a little, not nervous, but I'm just a little bit apprehensive about season 2, just because this was such a unique thing that just hit pop culture, and the, like, it just hit everyone at the right moment, it seems. So I'm kind of hoping that they can keep that energy going. So I'm a little bit nervous that maybe they might slip a little bit. But I mean, I've not seen anything else that the Duffer Brothers have done, so I would assume that they've created such an interesting world in the first season that I don't see them faltering that too much. And final thing, we talked about as much about Barb in this episode as the show made reference to. Yeah. So yeah, they've announced, or they've hinted at her fate or whatever at the end of the season in interviews and stuff. I haven't read any of them or anything, but just that scene where in the episode The Bathtub, I believe, which is an homage to the title of The Bathtub is an homage to The Shining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Anyway, in that episode they showed, I think it was that episode, they showed just revealed that she's all messed up in the Upside Down.
Right.
And presumably dead. And it's just, that was just so, ooh.
It really hit you in the face.
It did.
Yeah. Because, I mean, there's violence in the show, but it's so fitting and it doesn't seem like out of place or like, I'd be fine with my 8 or 9 year old son watching it. Like I wouldn't worry about that. It fit in where it needed to and it made sense. And that was a notable scene because of the way they chose to depict the violence and the gore, and it worked out really well.
Absolutely. I agree. And so yeah, that's kind of our relatively quick thoughts on
Love
Stranger
Fest
Things.
for Stranger Things.
Exactly.
Which everyone loves it, so I don't care.
Absolutely. So let us know what you think. Find us in all the usual places. I posted a question on the Facebook group for Obsessive Viewer, asking what everyone thought of Stranger Things, and so we got a couple of comments here from Alex, who was a former coworker of ours and is now a current coworker of mine. She switched jobs. Super excited about that.
Awesome.
She said, "I loved it. Dustin is my favorite character by far, though Nancy is a close second."
Nice.
Yep, and I said that I loved Hop too, and yeah, and I said that I loved Hop and all of the kids, but I loved Dustin and Lucas particular, but all the characters were really great. And she said that there really isn't a bad character, and as far as the too nostalgic thing, I don't think it was, unless anything less, and people would have complained that it wasn't authentic enough, which I agree.
Nice.
And then Matt and Draco, our Patreon subscriber. Thanks, Matt. He said, "I thought it was just okay. I don't see why everyone thought it was as great as they do. It wasn't bad by any means, but just okay."
Whatever. I'm kidding. No, that's fine. I understand.
Fair enough. And finally, Doug from Movie Madness Podcast said, "One of the best shows I've seen in years, and to all the nostalgia naysayers, you know what you get when you take away the nostalgia? The Star Wars prequels."
Nice. That's perfect.
Oh, yeah. So that'll about do it for this week's bonus episode of The Obsessive Viewer. Once again, check out my solo side project podcast anthology, where I'm also doing bonus episodes about Black Mirror, anthologypod.com, and go to Shocktober and Irvington.com for information on and buying tickets to our event here in Indianapolis on October 14th. And I think I'll end the episode with a promo for that. And Tiny, anything else you need to say, or should we call it night?
Keep your eyes open for the Demogorgon. Yeah, I love the show.
Me too. It was so good.
Nice.
Okay. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Tickets are on sale now for the 3rd annual Shocktober in Irvington, presented by the Obsessive Viewer podcast. Join the hosts of the Obsessive Viewer on October 14th, 2016 at the Irving Theater for a one-night event screening of short horror films, including the premiere screenings of J.P. Lex The Roman, the latest entry in his cross-medium Elsewhere World universe, as well as the latest slasher from Snapshot Productions and Billy and Brandon Watch Movies. All of this and so much more. Come celebrate the horror genre in the historic Irvington area and get a chance to meet the filmmakers with live interviews after each screening. You can also win DVDs, Blu-rays, and gift cards to Irvington businesses. Tickets are on sale now at ShocktoberInIrvington.com. All proceeds will go directly to the Irvington Historical Society. And we will see you at the Irving Theater on October 14th. That is, if you dare.
Thank you for listening to The Obsessive Viewer, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find more of our episodes at ovpodcast.com, and you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or your preferred podcast app. The Obsessive Viewer's theme song is An Eclipse of Events and is provided by Loudlike from their EP Mistakes We Must Make. You can find that and more great music from them on iTunes, and like their Facebook page at facebook.com/loudlikemusic. Any and all feedback on the podcast is encouraged. You can email the hosts individually at Matt, Tiny, or Mike at obsessiveviewer.com, or send an email to the podcast in general at podcast@obsessiveviewer.com. Check out the Obsessive Viewer blog at obsessiveviewer.com, where we post movie and TV reviews and the occasional editorial about the business of entertainment. You can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer and follow us on Twitter at obsessiveviewer, at obsessivetiny, and at IamMikeWhite. If you want more obsessive content in your life, check out our sister site, obsessivebooknerd.com, for book reviews, author spotlights, and a general celebration of reading. Finally, if you're philosophically curious, check out Tiny's side project podcast, The Secular Perspective, which explores the concepts of faith, religion, and existence from the perspective of secular hosts. You can find that at thesecularperspective.com and subscribe to the podcast on the podcatcher of your choice. Again, thank you so much for listening. We love you. Be excellent to each other.